the Cubs are better than the Brewers. Okay. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to flat out, straight up say it. Hey folks, welcome to the BN Cubs Podcast. I am Brad Taylor. That's Michael Cerami. We're here to talk Cubs. Thank you to our sponsor, Ankin Law, 312-6 million, injury law, made personal. I was trying to think if there was a, injury law joke there to segue into some of the topics of the week, but we'll play it serious for now. We'll play it serious. So let's start with the series conversation, because then we can get into the individual topics, of which I'm sure there are a lot of things to say. Cubs played the Brewers this week, and I think it'd be fair to say three things that pretty much everyone agrees with. Okay. One would be, going into the series, a 5-gamer with a doubleheader baked in, I don't think anyone was expecting the Cubs to win 4 or 5 games of the series. I think that's one that pretty much fair across the board. 2, I think most people would agree that winning 3 of 5, so taking the series, winning the season series, beating a Brewers team that has lost 1 non-Cubs game in the last month, that's a real fact, folks. That's a real fact. Is a commendable outcome. That's a good series. Stripped of context, that's a good series, right? Winning 3 of 5 against the hottest team in the last 30 years of baseball, whatever. And then lastly, I think everyone would agree, I still feel a little disappointed. I today feel disappointed. And so I think all 3 of those things are true. That's a needle that somehow got threaded, but I think all those 3 things are true for me. And I'm going to take a guess 90% of the folks listening too.
Yeah, I think, I sort of wrote about it in the post gamer yesterday, in that it was like the reason why it's disappointing is that winning 3 games and having and before the final game gave them a chance to win 4 games and do something unexpected. And then, whether or not it's mathematically as different as it feels emotionally, 5 games back feels like that can happen. We're not even in September. What I mean? Like, you could pick up another game and then who knows what happens in September. 7 games back is like, it's not happening. And so you had to, it forced us sort of to come to terms with, outside of a Brewers-like run for the Cubs,
and a big slump for the Brewers.
Yeah, right. Nothing's happening in the division. And that was just sort of like, it kind of felt like having to shut the door on that. And that's why I think it was so disappointing. Whereas had the Cubs only won 2 games going to the final game, and it was like, well, they already didn't get there. The most they can win is, it would have been, and then they won that game.
Sure.
Not because it was the last one, but because it was like, all right, well, it would have been one earlier, but like, we had the chance. And just to put an even finer point on it, you're going into that last game, but the Cubs have won 3, and I tell you ahead of time, Shota's going to go 7 innings with 2 earned runs. Yeah. You're like, well,
pretty good chance.
Yep. And so, taking 4 in a row from Milwaukee would have brought the vibes back. And instead, not only did the vibes not come back, and I won't get into the specifics if you don't want to yet, they also were on the heels of so much sideshow things that are going on. That was like, it's like so many things where it's like everyone, like, it's not retrospect to when everyone's like, are you sure this is a good idea? And then exactly it plays out the way that we thought. It's like,
the way that we thought.
We're not being hindsight Monday morning quarterbacks or whatever. Like, that is exactly what we were all worried about. And it played out precisely like that. So I know I'm not using any nouns there, but I think you guys
we'll get
know
there,
because
I want to get to that. Last thing I wanted to say about the series as a concept, I suppose, is frustrating wouldn't be the right word. Disappointing wouldn't quite be the right word, but there's a word for this feeling that we've now seen the Cubs play the Brewers 13 times. The Cubs are better than the Brewers. Okay. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to flat out, straight up say it. Not only because the Cubs have won the season series, Cubs They won. If it was a 13-game series, the Cubs won. Therefore, they're better.
They also won a 5-game series. I mean, if that was like a playoff series.
So I think that's a factor, but also just observing these teams. And I understand that's going to get me crushed by both Cubs fans and any Brewers fans, because apparently there are some weirdo Brewers fans who listen to this podcast, probably just to revel. But I think this Cubs team is better. And I think that that's just a fact. And I think it sucks that the way this is going to have played out over the course of the season is that the Brewers are going to have won a lot more games than the Cubs. And I am going to think that that's BS. I'm going to look back on it in October, however things play out. Maybe the Cubs make a run and they end up, going deep in the postseason anyway. But I'm going to look at this season and I'm going to say this Brewers team was not better than the Cubs. And it sucks that it played out that way. And I'll eat anything that comes from that, because I just think that this was the final confirmation for me that head to head, this Cubs team is better than this Brewers team.
And I guess I'm not going to try to soften that for you, but I do want to kind of, I think, describe some of the immediate arguments that you would face. And it's kind of like, one, it's like on paper, right?
Yes. On paper is a big part of this. Yes.
That's the thing. And that's not a bold, declaration. Teams that are better on paper frequently.
Most would say that yeah, right. You're right.
You know what I mean? And not to play devil's advocate, because I agree with you. I think you're 100% right. I would say that there's a lingering, nagging bug in my mind that if it weren't for all of the specifics of so many things changing from the front office to the management to the players, it would be true. But because of those factors, I don't know if it is. The Brewers seem to frequently outperform their on paper outlook, right? And so it makes a creeping, lingering, again, bug in my brain where I'm like, is there something that I'm missing about these Brewers teams that make them better than in real on paper ways that we can't yet understand, than they're projected to be, then they map out to be? What's that about? And I don't know if there's really an answer there. And
I can fill it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a big difference. Take the last 5 years, however many you want to go back, where we would say, looking at a Brewers team in March that were like, kind of meh, or, they've lost all these guys. And then they outperform and they put together a good record. They win the division, whatever it might be. Fall on their face in the playoffs, mind you, always, by the way, Brewers fans. Yeah. But I think that the big difference this year is those previous seasons, when the final accounting was in and I looked back, I was like, oh, you know what? Actually, these Brewers were better than the Cubs. They were, they were factually better than I thought. And sort of this year's Brewers team, vis-a-vis the Cubs, I'm really making more of a comment about the Cubs than I am about the Brewers this time, is I don't have that feeling. And I really don't think the next month is going to change that, where I'm going to look back and say, you know what, now with more info and a clearer-eyed view of observing this Brewers roster, I can see that they're actually better both on paper and on the field than the Cubs. I don't think that's going to happen. I would have said that last year, year before. This year, I just don't think that's going to happen. And
wait, I want to add one thing. And again, for people that are like, is Andrew Vaughn good? Like
that's such a great example.
Yes. What a small ice, you know what I mean? Like, yes, he has been performing well, and you can't deny that that's true, because it is. But no, the career negative WAR player isn't.
Who do you want for the next month and a half on your team? A broken ass Kyle Tucker or Andrew Vaughn? Who are you picking to put on your team for the next 6 weeks? Now, are there going to be some Cubs fans that are like, oh, Andrew Vaughn? Yeah,
I know.
Of course. But would any of the 30 top executives in baseball do that? Of course not. And we can debate, and Brewers fans would, the extent to which an organization can manufacture that kind of performance out of a player like Andrew Vaughn. And I'm sure there is some credit due, because there are some differences under the hood in his performance. And we certainly give the Cubs credit when stuff like that happens.
Well, we do that with pitchers mostly, though, too. And it's
mostly
like,
with pitchers.
It seems rare with hitters, but
I think because it happens more rarely with hitters. Like I'm trying to think of, that's actually a really good side conversation, is who are some examples of the last, bunch of fringy position players who've come to the Cubs and had the kind of performance flip like we've seen from a Brad Keller or, whoever else. I can think of a lot of guys they've signed or traded for that did not do that. I mean, I guess like, Carson Kelly.
I'm like Luis Valbuena. Like, no. And I think the other thing is, like, for pitchers, it's like, hitters, it's hard to like change your swing mechanics mid-season. And pitchers, sure, it's hard to change mechanics, but you can say,
there's a lot more you can do.
Throw it more often.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's something they can do at any point without developing a new pitch or whatever.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Data and communication and analysis and observation probably can do a little more in season on the pitching side than, and the Brewers, by the way, have a lot of success with pitchers in season as well. So no comment there. All right, we'll leave it there. And then my final response to anybody who, wants to fight me on this is I'll just say scoreboard, and then they'll say standings, and I'll say, no, scoreboard. And it'll go on like that because I'm mature, and so is this imaginary person I'm fighting with. Okay, let's talk about the big topic. The Brewers series is a big topic, but it isn't the cloud that's sitting on top of all of this, which is two things happened this week. Things finally came to a head with Kyle Tucker, and Craig Counsell and the Cubs decided to sit him down for at that time, unstated break. It happened in tandem with Owen Casey being up and inexplicably, in my view, not getting any starts the entire weekend against the Pirates. The offense continuing to flounder. And so there were a lot of things that I think pushed together in favor of saying, it's time after a long slump, not looking right at the plate, not making good quality contact. Let's just give this guy a mental reset. That happens. And then a day later, it gets reported, and I won't put too fine a point on the timing there about he finally gets sit down. And then we find out somehow someone reveals to someone that 2 months earlier, actually Kyle Tucker did have a fracture in his hand. That slide on June 1st, that initially the x-rays were negative. We looked at it a little bit later with some more detailed scans. This is why I always warn about that, by the way. X-rays, that post-game x-rays don't always tell you everything. But now we know also the teams won't tell you everything. Because they did do those follow-up scans, showed a fracture, but they said showed signs of healing at that time. He was producing very well in June, so it was sort of let's just put it under the hat. Nobody needs to really talk about that. I don't have a problem with that portion of it, actually, because I think that does happen all the time. I think guys have injuries that are known about, but they play through it, and the performance is fine, or nobody notices, nobody says anything, so whatever. That's normal. What I don't like, what pisses me off about the way this played out, is that then after that moment, Kyle Tucker was permitted to keep playing for 6+ weeks of some of the worst baseball of his career, while batting second, while the offense as a whole was floundering. And it took that long to finally say, okay, we need a reset. When they knew there could have been a physical precursor to all of this. It would be very different if a guy was just going through a completely inexplicable 6-week slump, but he's a superstar, so you just let him play through it, whatever. No, they knew that entire time that there definitely could be an explanation for his performance struggles. And they just kept waiting. He kept struggling. And I'm telling you, the cutoff for that should be somewhere shorter than 6 weeks of terrible baseball.
And okay, listen, and not that it mattered or probably even would have mattered in looking forward. Think of God, I'm sorry for stumbling over my words, but leading up into that Brewers series, and then that's when you set Kyle Tucker. You let all this happen, and again, I get that like maybe it didn't matter, and it's not how the teams did. It sucked. It sucked being a Cubs fan because it was like that series went from, and I've written this too. For one point, I was going, I hope the Cubs have a big enough lead so that series they can't drop out of first place. Then it went, I hope the lead is big enough so that even if they lose all the games, they're still like within a game or two. Then it was like, I hope we're within 5 games. So if we sweep all the games, we could be back in first place. Then it was like, okay, if we win them all, we could be 4 games out or 3, whatever it was. And that was all happening. Kyle Tucker was struggling. The rest of the offense was struggling. And then we learn about the fracture, and then they sit him during that series. So you took this thing that was going to be this awesome series, and now our best player is being benched. And I get that it's a reset or a rest. He was benched.
That's the word. That is the word.
That's what being benched is. And because if it was anything else, then you go on the IL or you're day to day with a finger injury. That's not what this was. And it happens like that. And it's like almost like I was embarrassed in front of the Brewers. It's like, come on, like really?
Well, especially because the Brewers manager goes on the Chicago sports radio station, the home of the Cubs, and is insane. The one saying, well, I think he's hurt.
How about and then Bob Nightingale? Was it Bob? I think
crediting. Yeah, he's like,
yeah. He goes,
the Cubs confirmed Pat Murphy's report.
What a crazy thing to say! It's like, no, that's not what he was doing. That's not what it was. And if he was, that would have been highly inappropriate. And so it wasn't. I
very much doubt. And I know Pat Murphy and Craig Counsell are close, but I don't think it's like Pat Murphy was like, yeah, Craig told me is that.
Yeah.
I think I think that happened. And then that probably put even more pressure on some people behind the scenes to come clean is the wrong phrasing, but like put it out there.
I mean,
let me put it this way.
No, let's talk
Okay. This getting out there when it did provides cover for Kyle Tucker, right? Because he is heading into free agency where some really big numbers got talked about. And I tell you what, I haven't heard those really big numbers getting talked about in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I want to talk about that next.
So this gets out there and that provides some cover that like, hey, there's a one-off, unique, weird explanation for this terrible 2-month slump. It also provides cover for the Cubs because the way the story was originally framed was sort of like, well, they talked about an IL, but Tucker didn't really want to, and he was playing well, so it sort of made sense. And it provides a little cover for why the Cubs didn't do anything sooner. Again, as my heated point earlier makes, I still think they could have acted a whole heck of a lot sooner than they did. But it was one of those things that, especially because he's sitting, that it's like everybody associated with the news, not the fans, everyone associated with the news can be like, okay, it's a fine time for this to leak out. And that in a way made me even more angry because it's like you kept this in your pocket until it was optimal for it to come out for everybody.
I mean, it felt to me like an agent leak in so far, like you said, it provides a little cover for Tucker and is an explanation for his struggles. And it felt to me like something the Cubs weren't going to put out there even through his sit.
Because typically they don't.
Someone else. Right.
If someone's injured but doesn't go on the IL, teams don't comment on it. That's kind
right.
of
So I think that was like, he's playing terrible. He's getting benched. And so his agent was like, well, shit, I need to put this out there and let people go, oh, that's why he's hurt. The Cubs, it's their fault. They should have put him on the IL. Now, I both say that out of one side of my mouth. And here's the other question I want to ask you that I've struggled with this in a lot of ways because the best thing to do is it's follow best process and not just again, look back and say, well, you could have done X, Y, Z. Cause as you mentioned, players play through injuries all the time. And sometimes it doesn't matter. And sometimes the more important lesson that we always take away is Kyle Tucker at 90% is better than his replacement at 100%, right? Or whatever. And obviously he wasn't, maybe not at 90%, but that's besides the point. My question though is there any minimum we can hold the Cubs to say, forget about it being a shorter window, because that's the primary point, and I agree with that. But let's say that should there be something that they can recognize and act upon by their own scouting and additional information that they have that no one else has, and the way that the training staff works with Kyle Tucker to say, even though you're performing a little bit right now, you need to rest that before these mechanics get out of sync. We've noticed that are we talking about that these mechanics got so out of whack that even now he's healthy, one of the best hitters in baseball, can't hit anymore, and the Cubs didn't notice those mechanics changing this whole time?
Yeah, I have wondered that too, specifically the mechanics part. Right? Aren't there biometric data points available for every swing where it's sort of like you could see? And I mean, I think two things. One, the answer's the answer's got to be yes. And then it's got to be that they would say, well, throughout the course of a season, we see huge as a relative term, fluctuations. Even for really good players, we see, the bat path changes slightly, the hand positioning changes.
Tied to a specific thing that happened.
And that's exactly what I would yell about. I'd be like, yeah, but in this case, you knew something happened. And so I think, let me do a little what you were doing, both sides of my mouth. On the one hand, he performed for June, okay, really well, best month of the year. So throw that out, right? Then you got the All-Star break 2 weeks after that. So they would have given him those 2 weeks. And then they're like, well, he had kind of a reset, right? Like he was away from competitive games for 4 days. He had the All-Star game, but he's away from competitive games. So he had that reset. Okay. So then we're watching closely, and he comes back, and it's the first 2 weeks of July, or the last 2 weeks of July. We're still seeing some underperformance, but the ground ball rate hadn't really exploded yet. And that would have been one of your big signals. The bat speed had started to decline, but not, super aggressively. I will concede, because we wrote about this in 2 different times, that to that point, early August, I was 1, 2, 3, something like that. He'd had dips like this before in his career that were entirely, that this period of performance change was consistent with other performance changes he's had organically in his career. And so the Cubs might say, so the very earliest we could have, possibly thought about doing something would have been the first week of August. To which, by the way, I'd say, okay, but you didn't. That's still
so 3 weeks ago.
Games. Yeah, that's still 10 plus games that everyone was talking about how he was in the crap right now. Like, it wasn't like the Pirates series was the final straw for us as outside evaluators. We were already like, what are you doing? What are you doing for at least 10 games before that? So,
I don't want to leave this topic yet, because I have 2 more things that I want to talk about with respect to Tucker. So I didn't want you to transition. How about there's so much clear evidence and logic. Oh, go on.
Sorry, hold that thought, because I want to, let me pin mine, which is that, and even if you did or didn't recognize these things that were happening, in the end, you gave him 2 days.
That's what I was going to get.
Days.
That's what I'm getting at.
You couldn't have done that 2 weeks ago. It's 2 games.
Right. And in this case, they did 3 games. Okay. Over 2 days. But wait. So it's actually a worse 2 days to give him off, because you're more games being played without him. If the point was just rest with the same amount of rest. Now, and then here's the flip side. The Cubs won all 3 games that he didn't play. And so I'm not saying that that's like, we're going to get to that point, but it's like, you banked that. That was so lucky. Now you can rest him enough. You could keep resting him because you didn't lose anything while he was gone. And that would be the concern, right? It's like, what if Kyle Tucker's just about to turn it back on, and we're going to win these games, and we lost because he didn't do it. Well, you won those games. So those games are like freebies of having rest. Now, setting all of that aside, here's the other thing. The Cubs had one more game at Wrigley where he had been being booed, and he had been successfully replaced by Owen Casey. Again, save that for a second because whatever. How do you not just say you're sitting out the rest of the Brewers series? You're going to get on a plane. You're going to fly to the West Coast or whatever we're playing, and you're going to start completely fresh in a new city, new series. Let your mind reset. Instead, they gave him 2 days, missed 3 games, and then got him back in the lineup batting second for the end of the Brewers series when they were already, at the highest pressure point of you needed to win that game for it to be a thing. And you brought him back for that, which was at best a high risk, high reward thing where sure, maybe he becomes a big hero but Jesus Christ, we're doing high risk, high reward. How about you just try to win? Shota was pitching with the wind blowing in. It is crazy that was the decision made. And again, just as someone who I like clean breaks and round, it seems so obvious that you're just going to sit for the rest of this series and then we're starting you fresh. That talk about if it was any tiny bit of it was mental, then you should have done it that way. Right. And they didn't.
Yeah. I've got to believe that there was an evaluation done either with Kyle Tucker or above his pay grade. And the decision was made that it would be that it would be worse for his sort of well-being, because we care about that because then it affects performance, for him to sit the whole rest of the series and watch his team win without him. And, that it would be worse for the rest of the year if they went that way. And so it's worth the risk of bringing him back.
Yeah, I don't buy that at all, but I get what I know the point you're making. Yes.
Yes. If I were in that room and that was the conversation being had, I would say, okay, I hear you, but that's crazy.
Yeah. How about also here's another thing that we do all the time. And I go back and forth because it's people. Oh, let's talk about how about this part? Let's sort of do a half pivot here. Did Owen Casey's performance bear any impact on your thoughts about whether or not you should sit Kyle Tucker
for this final game?
Yep.
Zero.
Exactly.
For me, it was 100% about, no, give him a clean window of time to be because then it's a clear communication that we want you to fully reset. Okay. Mm-hmm. That it isn't we're just giving you 2 days. Listen, that Thursday game was a day game after a night game. He might have sat one of those games anyway, just as part of rest, because sometimes that happens. So it feels like they wanted to have it both ways. They wanted to give him a rest for a reset, but not have it really be a full rest and not really have him miss all that much time. And that's where the high risk, high reward is, that if he comes back on Thursday and he has a great game and he feels good, then it's okay, maybe this just boom, click, it's all behind us. Because Tucker has made that point. He's one good swing, and players always say that. But the risk is now, to at least to us, it's he came back and it was what was all that for? He looked exactly the same.
Exactly
the same.
He rolled over at least one, maybe two, grounded out softly to third, popped up and walked. It was okay, so nothing different. He had that line drive out, but that was a soft liner. So he had one grounded to third, one to first, and the soft line.
And we're not saying one game, we aren't being those meatballs who are saying one game of results tells us everything about.
Oh no,
player. We know that it's that he, for his purposes, couldn't look at that and be okay, I feel, maybe he could. I don't know. I guess I can't get inside his head, but I can watch what happened in that game and say, I don't see anything that's going to sort of be the turning point, where this rest was worth it. And it's okay, came back feeling good. I did this thing. I lined out 4 times, but you know what? They were lifted. They were my normal swing. It felt good. So it's just going to continue to be a story now for this road trip.
Oh, rest of the season, maybe even.
I mean, until he turns. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you then and then this will lead us into the next little thing I want to talk about. Is there any reason to think that the decisions the Cubs made this week or with Kyle Tucker all along were in service of maximizing and optimizing their relationship with Kyle Tucker for the purposes of really still wanting to extend him after the season? Like, is there, maybe he was like, no, I want to play. Like, do you think that there's anything to that? And then let's talk about the money afterwards, but I just want to see that.
No, I think that's a really important point to make. I don't think I'm going to give a satisfying answer because I think that the real answer to any of us should be, well, I don't know, because we don't know really what those conversations have been. I'll just give you my gut instinct about the whole situation has been that they were never extending him. He was always going to hit the market, and that's a Cubs decision as much as a Tucker decision. And that they were going to hope that the prices would come in. They wouldn't be so crazy over the top that they'd be like, okay, his market is in the 350 to 400 range. He loved his time in Chicago. His family's happy. We'll get him for 350. Like, I think that was their dream scenario. And that might not just be their dream scenario. It might be their only scenario in which he actually returns. And so to that point, certainly they're going to want to treat him well this season. But they also want to win games because they want to show him that just as well. And I think that you can't be overly deferential to a guy because then that can hurt you in other ways, not just game performance, but like in relationships with other players. Like, I think they want to have a good relationship with Owen Casey too. And so I think that there's a lot that goes into that I don't know, beyond those points, I just couldn't say.
Okay. So then this is like a meatball-y, homery question, but I actually think there's more to it. How much money, if any, has he cost himself? And if the season ended today, and how much of it can he recoup if he just, lights it up in September? I think there's actually that's the way to look at it, but
Yep. You framed that exactly right. I think probably people aren't being careful enough to think about it that way. Right. Because if he goes ham the rest of the way and is just a monster the rest of the way, then this is an explainable blip that has zero impact on his earnings. Zero.
Yeah, I agree.
Whatever they were going to be, I don't think they'll go up or down. I think it's whatever it was going to be. If it lingers like this, however, for the rest of the way, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind it's going to be a factor, not because teams that are bidding on his services are going to say, you didn't perform well enough in your walk year to justify a big number. It's going to be that concern that they'll have going forward. One, physically, mechanically, like he just wouldn't have shown great stuff, and he's not old by any stretch, but like guys age and things change. So that'd be a factor. And then two, it would be how susceptible is this guy to minor issues creating havoc on his performance? I think that one, teams, when they negotiate with his camp this offseason, they're probably going to throw that one out there anyway. They're going to say, well, we have some, he came back and he performed well in September, but he really went through a huge slump. Is he just really susceptible to which they'll say, well, he had the leg fracture the year before and he came back and was just as good after that and whatever. But I mean, teams will use whatever they can. What do you think?
I think there's like three ways to look at it. One, the first time he cost himself money was only in what was behind door number 3. And that is to say, he had the monster year last year, even though it was interrupted by the injury, he came back, was great. And then started the year really, really hot. And had he had another 170, 165 season, then I think he could have been in that conversation to get something ridiculous and out of the Cubs price range. But that might have gone away even with a season we were all thrilled with. He had to have been, he had to have been a top 3 hitter in baseball the whole year and playing excellent defense and stealing bases, playing out of his mind, MVP caliber. And then you were okay, maybe he's going to get 550, 600, something that's got off the table before this all blew up, right?
Yep.
Now it's like, yeah, I think that this is how I think about it. I think that if the season ended today and it was like this, I don't think it's that he cost himself 100 million, 200 million. It's only going to get, I think he's like looking at either a pillow deal and tries to reestablish his value, which is not really the MO of his agency. That's more of a Scott Boras thing, or one of those like shorter term opt out deals where you like get big money, but for less years and fewer years, and you could get right back out there and score big
because you're saying if the season ends today, a $400 million deal isn't out there for him.
I think maybe not if it really ended today.
Not a rhetorical question, by the way, because I think some people might disagree with us, but I think I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And I think that I think before the season, I think if it would be like 450 is kind of like that sort of range of what they were thinking, right? Like maybe like 45 million a year, 10 years.
Sure. Because there was still a chance that he was going to be a monster this year.
Right. And so I just think that if the season ended today and ended on such a down note and the injury and he never turned it back on even a little bit, then I think if you're Kyle Tucker or his agent and he's still young, that you could play another season.
Right.
But what I'm saying, by the way, is not like 1 year and 25 million, or you know what I mean? Like I'm talking about like a $40 million a year. Yes. Deal. Like a Bregman deal. Exactly. And that with opt-outs after year 1, year 2, year 3, so you still would make 125 million in over 3 years. But anyway, that's how I think. And then by contrast, I think if he turns it back on, and even if he blows it out, goes insanely, supersonic, it's still never going to be the 556. It's going to be like, you could get your 400, your 425, your 450 at the highest end because one team, one owner just really wants you to sign with him. And that's it. This has left a mark on him one way or another.
Well, even if nothing else, it's 2 months of terrible numbers. And so that's going to ding what you were able to produce in the season. And that of course is going to be a factor in projecting him going forward, which is what teams are going to do when they're figuring out how much to pay him. And I think the unspoken, unknown part of this, and we're not going to get off on this tangent because I want to get to the game, is, CBA, there's after next season, there's going to be issues. So we don't know how that's going to impact teams. They're all that could affect these things in either direction in ways that we can't really predict right now. Okay. Game. You ready?
Yeah. Let me switch us. Today's game is brought to you by Felco, the home renewal experts. Bleacher Nation is proud to partner with Felco. For almost 50 years, Felco has been transforming Chicagoland homes with their windows, siding, doors, and roofing. Felco is family-owned and prides themselves on delighting their customers. With products made in the U.S. and designed specifically for the Midwest, Felco offers the perfect balance of beauty and energy efficiency. What do you got for me this week?
This week's game is called Leaders and Laggards, and it is a very simple one. It is in the second half. So since the All-Star break, we are going to play a little identification game on who leads the Cubs and who lags the Cubs in various statistical categories. Okay. That's it. Simple. Okay. So we're going to start pretty easy, I think. Let's just go the biggest and best picture. Who leads the Cubs in the second half in slash line and weighted runs created plus?
Matt Shaw.
By how much do you think? Just out of actually, who do you think is second, and by how much is?
That's
Shaw
a better question because I was like, it's like Matt Shaw. Who's second? I think it's maybe Ian Happ.
It is Ian Happ.
Yeah,
and he's Shaw has about 70 points on him.
Yeah, I'm right. It's 180. Ian Happ's like 117 or something. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's actually only one other hitter. One other Cubs hitter in the second half with above average production. Who is that hitter?
Is it Nico?
Among the regulars. Say it again.
Horner? Nico Horner?
It's Nico. Just by the tiniest little click. Everyone else.
But he's actually, he's like been at like 102 the whole year normal, and for all of his career.
Standard
just like doing this thing. Yeah.
Okay. On the flip side, laggards, who we'll start with the anyone, you got to pick the cutoff somewhere. Okay. So let's say 30 plate appearances in the second half. Who has the worst production overall for the Cubs?
I mean, so here's the thing. I want to say Kyle Tucker. I'm going to say Kyle Tucker, but before I answer that, I'm going to walk through my thought process a little bit. I'm pretty sure Seiya Suzuki has been like awful for a while. And I don't know if he is dropped to the depths or if Kyle Tucker's just higher profile. Michael Busch
mention
didn't have
on Seiya, terrible results for a long time now. Boy, is he getting screwed on the strike zone and a lot of really good contact. I think if we looked at his batted ball metrics for the last 3 weeks, they'd be, lower than his typical, but pretty solid.
When I write those articles, Brett, they call it farticles in the comments.
Yeah,
section.
They don't.
Do you know that? It's
amazing. People don't want to hear, hey, guess what? Baseball involves luck.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of who else. So like Hap Swanson has had some struggles, but I feel like he has some games where he's hit it hard. Is it Kyle Tucker? I mean, is he the...
Okay. 2 ways to respond.
It's like Reese McGuire or something.
So it's close, but among guys with 30 plate appearances, it's actually Willie Castro. He has done pretty much nothing. There was that home run.
I knew
that was it. And then Reese McGuire is next. But among the regulars, okay, and here's the surprise for you. Kyle Tucker is actually ahead of 2 Cubs regulars offensively in the second half.
Because of the walks, though, right?
You mentioned, yeah. And because early on, he was taking a ton of walks. You mentioned one of them, Dansby Swanson, just a tick below. Seiya's right there with Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker, I'm just going by weighted runs created plus at this point. Kyle Tucker's at 73 in the second half, Seiya at 75. Okay. Dansby 68. And the laggard of the group at 65 is actually Michael Busch.
Yeah.
Michael Busch.
They do not talk enough about whether or not he should stop leading off.
Interesting thing about him for me is when he was amazingly good, didn't get talked about a whole lot. When he's been terribly horrible, doesn't get talked about a whole lot.
Especially surprising for the leadoff hitter.
Yeah, you'd think that there'd be a lot more attention.
They usually always talk about that.
Paid to it. Yeah, 246 on base.
But you know what? It's because when he was really hot, PCA, Tucker, and Suzuki were amazing. And when he is really bad, PCA, Tucker, and Suzuki, and Swanson, and everyone has been pretty bad. So he's kind of just falling into the crowd.
Some counting stat things. I'll spare the suspense to note that Matt Shaw is the second half leader in home runs, and RBI. But not in stolen bases. He's second in stolen bases. Who leads the Cubs in second stolen bases in the second half?
Okay, so, I think I'm being led to say PCA, but I'm going to guess it's Nico Horner.
The fact that I'm asking, I suppose, should be evidence that it's not. Would you believe that PCA has only 3 stolen bases in the second half?
Yeah.
Nico with 7.
You want to know what go on.
No,
I was just going to say, remember when we were talking like a month or 2 ago, and I was saying the fake headlines that we're going to see in the second half, and it was like PCA becomes the first 30-30 guy, and you were like, what's that? Could be like next week. And it was like, that was like 8 weeks ago.
It's funny. He's just pacing himself. He didn't want to, it's too early in his career to be a 40-40 guy. He wants to leave something to achieve. On home runs though, do you know who is behind Matt Shaw?
Who's behind Matt Shaw on home runs in the second half of the season? I think Busch had 1 or 2. Castro, not Nico. His came before. I don't even remember. There's been no home runs.
Yeah, I have a lot of 1s and 2s, but there is someone who's hit 5 and someone who's hit 4.
Someone who's hit 5, someone who's hit 4. I mean, not PCA either, because he's been at 27 for a while. But I'm going to say Michael Busch. Didn't he have a few homers? Busch. Yeah.
He's at 5, and I think that's a big part of the reason that people have slept on how bad he's otherwise been. Ian Happ at 4 is...
Happ's been okay for a little bit. Not anything good, but...
Michael Busch at 14 RBI is also the second there. So again, he hasn't been producing, but when he has, he's made it count. Let's go over to the pitching side of things. Okay. Maybe a little more challenging. So I could make this. Do you want the very hard version or a lot easier version?
Let's do very hard. That way, when I get it wrong, I can
Okay.
have some face saving and be like,
So
well, I did the hard one.
All right. Among all pitchers on the Cubs with at least 5 innings in the second half, who's the ERA leader for the Cubs?
That's hard because that includes relievers. Like it's like probably like Caleb Thielbar.
That was precisely the dividing line. And no, Caleb Thielbar has been tremendous in the second half, but he actually trails 4 pitchers in ERA with the Cubs.
Cade Horton.
So Cade Horton leads the starters. That would have been the easier version of this.
Right.
Yes, he's had that incredible run all in the second half. But no, he actually trails. There's a pitcher with 14 scoreless innings in the second half. I did not realize it had reached quite this level. I knew he'd gotten back on track. I didn't know it was to this extreme.
It's not Palencia. It's not. Is it a reliever? Well, it's 14 innings, so it's probably a reliever, right?
It is a reliever.
I mean, it's like you, again, you want to say Brad Keller, but I feel like I've seen him give up a couple runs.
You feel like that, huh?
Is it Keller?
It is Brad Keller.
Okay.
And I felt like that too. But no, he is 13 straight scoreless appearances, 14 innings scoreless.
Wow.
And the peripherals are once again just over the moon, tremendous. The other guys who slot in there ahead of Thielbar was only at 159. So James Tyone, because he had the one start.
That's sneaky.
And then Taylor Rogers has actually only allowed one run since coming over. But
Kittredge had a good. What's Kittredge at? He had a good. He had that save that was pretty breezy.
Yeah, but you know what? He had the implosion outing, which in only 8 innings with the Cubs. So he's at 450.
Yeah.
So that does get us to the laggards, though. Who among the pitchers with at least 5 innings in the second half are? Let's do it this way. There's 3 guys with an ERA in the double digits. And I would say if you can get any of them, I'll be impressed.
Wait, say it again. There's 3 guys with double-digit ERAs in the second half of the season.
With at least 5 innings pitched.
Brazier?
Dude, that's 1 for 3.
Okay.
There's no way you'll get these other. You're going to be the hero of the podcast if you get these other 2.
Luke Little?
I was gonna say that's helping you though, by the way. He doesn't have enough innings.
Boy, everyone the starting rotation has been pitching well. So
here's a hint. Neither are still on the Cubs.
Ben Brown. Oh, did you mean not in the organization?
Not in the organization.
Oh, who did we DFA? Oh my God, I'm blanking. It's so hard when you're on the spot to think of people. It is
because with this information, you now know this. One is a guy that just didn't work out. Made sense to get him when they did, but it just didn't.
Why am I can't think of his name? I know exactly what you're talking about too.
He set a lot of records for giving up like 9 runs without recording an out at one point.
Yeah, Ryan Pressly.
Wasn't in the second half, but yes, Ryan Pressly. And then the other actually was tremendously good for the Cubs.
Oh, yeah. And then we were like, it was like, sorry, but there's no room.
It's over. Yeah, it happened very quickly, and it was over.
What's his name? I forget.
Yeah,
Don't
Chris
make
Flexen.
me. Chris Flexen. Yes.
I knew that was
Pressly
good.
I should have got. Flexen I forgot. But once you mentioned that, I was like, okay, yeah. Because did he start that one game that they needed him to?
Pre-break, but yes.
And then they were like, okay, see ya. It's like, oh man.
It was like, brutal. Okay. And I think he was fine, but
yeah.
Lastly, just for fun, who has thrown the most innings for the Cubs in the second half?
Okay, that's interesting. So I think Shota's had some like 7, 6, 7. Matthew Boyd has had some long ones. Horton had great starts, but they were like 5 innings and 6 innings. So I think the answer is, and it's not Tyone. Colin Ray's had some good starts. No, it's going to be Shota Imanaga.
You basically nailed it in the way you were talking about it. It's Shota, Boyd, Ray.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Nice.
And that's the game.
I didn't do terribly. Sometimes it's hard. It's like
good.
that's a good sense of like, where are your vibes at versus where's reality
versus where's the reality at.
I mean, that would be fun to go do with our comment section or the people that
and
like,
see if they.
Let's see what you actually know when you're talking. It's just hard. You got to watch a lot of baseball.
All right.
All
Oh, Addison. I just saw his comment there. Can't steal bases when you slide past them. I know.
All right. I have a question for you. Wait, when PCA slid back past the base, right? That was a caught stealing.
It's all part of the same baseball move.
What if he rounded second? Would that be a caught stealing?
Yes, I think it's still. I think the play has to end, and then a separate.
Okay, and another stupid question. This is going to be one of my games at one point, but I'm just going to do one right now. When there's a runner on base, and then the pitcher throws a ball in the dirt, and then the catcher picks it up and hands it to the umpire, and they get a new ball.
Yeah.
When's the play dead?
When the umpire goes like this.
But sometimes I feel like he just grabs the ball and puts it in his hand. It's like, this is
I understand
like there's an opportunity there.
I think once the umpire gets involved, it's dead. But
yeah.
And I think they would, if it then played out, I think the umpires would get together.
Well, it feels like, what if the catcher then try to grab it back and throw it? It's kind of like if you reach into the IV, it's like, they cut it off at reaching in, and so I don't know. It's
reaching in on the umpire. What a way to end this one. It's the BN Cubs podcast. I'm Brett. That's Michael. Read our stuff at Bleacher Nation. We are sponsored by the one and only Howard Ankin and crew. Oh, Michael has a thing.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to say we had our live event and I talked to so many amazing, nice people, but one lady in particular, Jennifer, came up to me at the end and just was telling us about how she's been reading Bleacher Nation for a while, loves the podcast, blah, 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 blah. And it was a lovely conversation. And I wanted to say, hi, Jennifer. Thanks for listening.
Talk to us in real life and you'll get a shout out on the podcast. So thank you for those kind words, Jennifer. Podcast brought to you by Ankin Law, 312-6 million, injury law made personal. We'll be back at you next week, and we appreciate you listening, and hopefully the Cubs can start this, West Coast swing with some wins against the Angels. Take care. Goodbye.